You're listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care Vigor, a podcast where we explore what it's like getting older, the peaks, the valleys, and everything in between. In this season of Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care Vigor, we're covering topics related to solo aging. I'm your host, Cheryl Proska. Let's grow old together.
On today's episode, I'm joined by Sarah Forti and Gina Bass from Forti Homes. Sarah is a lifetime resident of the Philadelphia and Mainline area with over 16 years of real estate experience and the founder of the Forti Homes Keller Williams Devon-Wayne team. She is a fierce advocate for her clients and a wealth of knowledge in all things real estate. She has represented hundreds of home buyers and sellers on their most valuable investment. Gina is a licensed social worker turned real estate professional who specializes in helping and supporting individuals who are transitioning into their next phase of life by assisting them in finding their right-sized home. With 6 years of experience in healthcare, including time at Friends Life Care, and a year of experience in the real estate industry, she brings a unique perspective to her work and the Forti Homes team. Sarah and Gina, welcome and thank you for being here. How are you both today?
Great. Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, absolutely. I'm thrilled. So you're both joining me today to discuss real estate, especially as it relates to older adults and solo agers. We're going to cover both the practical and emotional sides of moving and how Forti Homes can help. So to get started, let's cover when should older adults start a conversation with a realtor about potentially moving?
So we like to say here, it's never too early to start your conversation about potentially moving, right? When you start having the conversations with your family about what the future looks like, do we want to stay in our current space and what are the options available to us? When the older population is thinking, I might need a space that's smaller, I might need to move in with my children or want to move in with my children, or I might want to go into independent or assisted living, and they have all of those options available to them. I think that usually they wouldn't think, oh, let's call the realtor and they'll be able to, give us advice or help yet, right? They would probably think to call us once they made that decision to sell their house, right? And at that point, they've already decided where to go. But because of the number of people that we've worked with in this space and our knowledge of the real estate market and the other options that people have in terms of where to go, we just know a lot of those options. We know a lot of the facilities, a lot of the communities, and we can help them have those conversations and talk about those options well ahead of when it's time to do so. I mean, even if you're looking 5 years ahead and you think, well, what kind of work are we going to have to do to get our home ready for sale? That's a long time before moving time. But we can help guide them and provide advice and resources well ahead of the time that it's, crunch time to list our house, time to buy something, time to move into that new 55 and over community that's being built. So that's why we say it's really never too early.
Yeah, I think it's a great point to say that people usually think, oh, once I make a decision, that's when I reach out to my realtor. But what I think makes us different is that we like having those conversations and we like supporting people. And with my background, we have more knowledge about the different options and want to be in conversations with people, even if it doesn't make sense for it to happen. Like Sarah said, if it's 5 years down the road, we still want to have those talks about it.
Right.
And I feel like so often people may think, oh, I don't want to bother someone. I want to come fully prepared for this conversation. But it sounds like with you and your business, you really want to be in relationship with the individuals you're helping to make sure they make the right decision in the end. You're not just there to buy and sell a home. You're there to build a relationship.
Right.
Yeah. We're all about relationships. I would say that's the most important thing to us.
Yeah. It's not a transactional business that we're in real estate. It's a relationship business. It's an education business, a communication based business. So we want to be that source of education, of real education. One of our favorite phrases is news headlines terrify, they don't clarify. And we want to be the source of clarification, the source of real factual information of what's going on in the real estate market and what options people have available to them.
So we started touching on this, but I'm wondering, how do you help our older adults and our solo agers do that assessment about whether moving is right for them?
Sure.
I would say first, as cliche as it sounds, but participate in active listening and really, again, back to relationships and getting to know someone and understanding what their needs are and saying, we genuinely want to help you. We have different systems in place. We do like for our new buyers, we have a buyer questionnaire, and it's a thorough assessment of, what someone will be looking for. It talks about all different types of like what area you want to be in. So from location to style of your home, also
their hopes and dreams,
about
they want the next phase to look like.
I like one of my favorite things in our questionnaire asks about, what types of things do you want to do in your home? Like, is it for entertaining? Is it for family? What's the most important thing to you?
Right. Or are you traveling? Do you want to be traveling in the next phase? And then maybe you don't want all of that space, but if you plan on still hosting the holidays, then you do want all that space. So that's why having these conversations ahead of time are so important.
Yeah. And we really try, we're working with buyers right now who they came to us and they're downsizers, right sizers, we like to call them. They recently downsized and they said, we're really not happy where we are. And they just bought their house last August. So they're coming to us and saying, this isn't working. So we need something different. And we want to avoid that as much as possible because we want someone to have a good experience with us and we don't want them to move and then hate. That's like one of our worst fears, is that you move and buy a house and you hate it. So
they moved from out of state and looked not with us. We didn't know them at the time when they moved, but they were looking virtually and felt as though they were rushed to make a decision. So they did rush to make a decision. And while they accomplished part of their goal, which was to be near their children and grandchildren, they didn't address the other part of their goal, which was to be in a space that really made sense for them. And we don't want people to feel rushed. And that goes back to the first question you asked, is when should they engage in conversation with us? And that's why it's never too early, because planning is key. The other example I was thinking of was a family that came, or a couple that came to me and said, we want you to sell our home. We are moving into a 55 and over community where we're going to be able to age there and our kids aren't going to have to take care of us. So they were really looking out to protect their kids by moving into this community. And so we weren't part of those early conversations. They just called us when the decision was made and it was time to sell their home. And we sold their home. We helped connect them with contractors to get the house ready. And while we could have sold the house as is, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, they decided to make some small improvements to get the most money that they could out of their home. And we helped facilitate all of that and get them a great price for the home and make that process great. But, then they went into the 55 and over community, and a year later called and said, we don't like it here. We want to move into a 55 and over condo community, which is not independent and assisted living. It's a home, it's a condo, it's, you own it, but it is geared towards and is a 55 and over community. So somebody living there and owning that property has to be 55 years old or older. So that's what they ultimately decided they needed. But unfortunately, they had to go through a really expensive path to figure out what they didn't want, and ended up, in a place that was fantastic. I mean, I love where they ended up moving. But we want to avoid that. It's a lot of time and expense, energy, emotion that could be better spent with your family, doing the things that you love, investing for your, future kids and grandkids. So that's what we hope to achieve with our clients.
And when someone is setting that vision and using your assessments and really setting their priorities, they decide, hopefully a few years out, that, hey, making a move is right for me. What are the next steps that you take? And you gave a couple great case studies. So I'm just thinking those next steps, especially for older adults.
So hopefully, and if we haven't done the buyer needs analysis yet, we will do that at that point if they've decided that moving is right for them. So we'll talk to them about their hopes, dreams, goals. And after that's done, then we'll have more of a direction to go in. One thing that I like to do is drive them around to different communities. Maybe show them a couple of places in one community, a couple of places in another community. We can talk about the pros and cons of all of them. And if they decide they want to go into an independent or assisted living or both, combination both facility, then we can talk about the ones that are close to their family, are offering the services that they need. Maybe it's near the church that they like to go to. Maybe it has a well-known memory facility and they know they're going to need memory care down the road because of recent diagnosis. So we can help them with that and help them create a relationship with those companies and residential places as they're making these decisions. So really helping walk them through physically and online, and in conversation, different options that they have available to them. Yeah. And we know that unlike our relocation clients, let's say, who come in and say, I need to see 10 houses this weekend and make a decision. That is the opposite of what this clientele needs and what works for them. Typically, we're going to see 1 or 2 places at a time on a weekend or a weekday, and we're not going to rush it. We're going to see one space, then we're going to, a couple days later, or a week, or a couple weeks later, it depends on how much time we have, go see another space. So while we can rush, if somebody needs to make a quick decision, we certainly have that ability. We don't want them to feel rushed when they're making these decisions.
Yeah. And I think, just always remembering that everyone is so different and people have such strong opinions about what they want their future to look like, as they should. But I was thinking about when I was working at Friends Life Care, that was something that we would ask people a lot, like, what are your goals? Is your goal to stay in the home you're currently living in? Is your goal to move into a smaller home somewhere? Is it a 55 and older community? Is it a continuing care retirement community, like Sarah mentioned, with different levels? And just always remembering, like, every single person is different and feels differently about what they want their next steps to look like. So,
and it's a really emotional time. It's emotional for the client themselves, the one who's doing the moving, and for the family that's moving, helping the move. Right. And I think that's where Gina really comes in. I mean, she is a key player here in the transition. I feel like that's often something that if you come to your realtor, you don't expect them to maybe take things as slow or, listen to everything that you're going through. But it's something that Gina and I have a lot of experience doing, is listening to the family and listening to the client and really taking things at the pace that they need things to be taken at, and letting them know that we hear and understand, maybe not exactly what they're going through. But, having parents in this space, I'm going through it myself. Gina, as a social worker, has gone through it many times with clients. Like she said, not nobody's experience is going to be the same, but at least they know we are listening, we're here, and we understand and empathize with, the good and the bad, all that comes with it.
And what you're talking about right now leads me into this next topic that I was hoping to cover, which is with moving. There's a financial side and there's a very large emotional side. So I'd really like to hear more about how Forti Homes addresses both. And I know you started to touch on it, but I think our listeners could benefit from hearing more about that. And just Gina, your perspective as a social worker, I think would be very informative.
Yeah, I think, and we've kind of focused up to this point about really thinking about what's next and not what's behind someone. So selling their home, which a lot of people have been in their homes for 40, 50, 60 years. And the emotional attachment we have to and we all have our attachment to our stuff. Things are sentimental. It's really difficult, and it can be very overwhelming to think about cleaning out your house, getting it ready, doing different repairs that may need to get done. So something we talk about a lot, and the emotional side, the logical side, I feel like this all kind of ties in together. But Sarah will say to people, okay, so she'll visit the home, discuss like any changes that need to be potentially made. She'll talk about the different options in terms of, we call it like a walk away price. Like, you don't need to do anything to the home. We're just going to sell it as it is. Somewhere in the middle of maybe want to do a little bit of work, don't want to do everything. And then there's doing every single thing that we suggest and staging the home and going full,
like as if you're flipping your own house, right?
Like getting it as ready as possible for the market. So there's different options there as well. And speaking, talking someone through those options. But I think it's a really good point about, the emotional aspect, back to taking the time, processing, making sure that we're going as slow or as quickly as they want to go. Providing resources. I really like, there's different options. And again, that I've learned a lot of this through Friends Life Care, of support services that will help you declutter and go through the stuff in your home, because that can be so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then we have so many different resources from Sarah's experience over the last 16 years, plus my experience, out in the community. So yeah, just making sure people are connected with what they need is really important.
Yeah. Combining those financial and emotional side, like Gina said, we'll have that first conversation about the house and give them those three options. And usually they'll go with something in between, right? Because the first option, emotionally speaking, the walk away price, right? Shut the door behind you, move on, and we'll get what we get for the house, and we'll get as much as we can in its current state. And that works for some people. A lot of people, it doesn't work for if it's their biggest financial investment and they want to squeeze every dollar out of it, or if they are very emotional and want to present the home as best possible, or if they're just being pragmatic and want to get the highest dollar amount. That's usually the middle route that they'll take. Whereas the flipping your own house, while it's a great idea and it's a great option, if you have the funds and the time to do it, it usually requires too much work. And we're cognizant of that, where we could say, yeah, we can flip your house for you and basically GC that project with all of our vendors. It's usually beyond what actually is even necessary to get them the most dollar amount, because the ROI, the return on that investment, really it might not be the best use of time and the best use of their funds. Which reminds me, we really like when they have conversations, when we encourage conversations with their financial advisor and their CPA, so that they are looking at the financial aspect of this and saying, okay, well, once we sell your home, let's say it's $500,000, and a lot of times they don't owe anything on it, and a lot of times it's the bulk of the cash that they're going to have in their pocket to live on. So having a financial advisor or an accountant to work with them through that is very important, and they can handle the money part of it, and then we can help handle the physical aspect of the move and then the emotional aspect of the move. the emotionally and physically, the organizers that we work with who specialize in this are invaluable. Then we have moving companies. We have, I don't like to call them junk removal companies, so I'm looking for a new phrase of what to call them, but companies that for a very affordable price will come and remove all of the things that don't serve you anymore and that you can't use in your next home, but they might not be trash, but we can take them to Green Drop where things get recycled, right? And I mean, Gina knows I'm known for having a trunk full of things that I'm delivering personally to Green Drop. So we're really actively engaged as part of this process. And a lot of the times, if the homeowner is lucky enough to have their kids nearby who are helping them through the process, we're in direct contact with their kids, helping clear out the space and helping them work through the emotional importance of these items that they grew up with.
Yeah, and we're definitely involved in every step of this process. Like Sarah just mentioned all of the different resources and connections we have, and I'm usually the one coordinating those types of things. Like I'm the one that's, working with the homeowner, working with the family, and also coordinating the times, like
stager.
Right. Like they're not the ones calling people to set these things up. Like we're making sure that they're supported in that way as well. We want to take as much.
That's a good point. Like we're not saying, here's the number for the stager, call them.
Good luck. Yeah, no, we want to try to take as much stress off your plate as possible. We're working with someone right now, and he jokes every time I call that he's like, don't tell me I have to spend more money, just because there's so many little things around the house that need to get done.
But like imagining him having to call the concrete guy and, replace that concrete pad, we can take that off the plate and say, okay, we have to replace a concrete pad. It's going to be $400, but the township's making us do it. But don't worry. We scheduled it all. This is when it's going to be done.
Right.
And so at least he knows he doesn't have to go through all of that. We're going to do it for him.
I think that's a really good point too, is that people don't know about, or not, if you haven't sold a house in a while. So there's something called a use and occupancy in almost every township, and they all have different requirements depending on where your home is located. And so the township will come out and do a inspection, and then the biggest thing is replacing sidewalk blocks outside of people's homes. And I think that's a piece that people don't even think about. Like that's something that it just kind of gets lost because it's a township requirement. It has nothing to do with what you may want to do to your home. It's just the township is saying, and sometimes it's silly
in order
things,
to make things safe for the for the community, we have to have safe sidewalks, and this is how they get it done.
Yeah,
but that's something that will go when they do decide to make a move, and we're doing this market analysis on their home and saying, here are your options to sell, the 3 options and anything in between. And we do a closing cost estimate for them to say, all right, this is about what we expect to get for the house. And then these are the costs associated with it. And one of the costs is applying for that use and occupancy permit. And that's the point at which I'll say, your township does require, maybe it requires a sprinkler system inspection, or it requires curb inspections. And so we can give them the heads up on that and say, don't worry, we're going to coordinate that for you.
Yeah.
So it's not as overwhelming. So they have the information up front, but they also know they don't need to be the one coordinating and worrying. We want to take the worry off their shoulders so they can focus on the important part, which is feeling comfortable about where they're going and clearing out their space and, doing that at their pace. And then knowing that having the confidence that we're going to take care of their home to get them the highest dollar amount possible and make it as smooth as possible. I mean, real estate is what it is. It's sometimes unpredictable, which there are things that are out of our control, but we at least have the experience that we can handle them as they all come up. And while no situation is exactly the same, they all have similarities, and there's a process that we have to get through them.
And the fact that you're ready, willing, and able to take some of that just like burden and stress off of individuals is very priceless, where they can trust you and they can put some of these efforts into your hand. And you mentioned, I'm looking at my notes that individuals, in addition to working with a realtor and consulting their family, you talked about financial advisors, CPAs, professional organizers, clutter removal, individual stagers. Are there any other resources that haven't been touched on that you think individuals should know is out there and that you have found success working with?
Yeah. So there are a couple of companies around that, or resources, I should say, that specialize in the downsizing population or the aging population. They provide comprehensive consultation when it comes to this, from finding the right facility or finding the right care for somebody who wants to age in place, finding counseling for themselves or their family members. And there are a couple that we've worked with and that we stay in touch with that can really help make this transition a little bit more exciting even, right? Because they have, like us, they have resources at their fingertips. They have even more relationships with facilities that could be options for some of our clients. And while we serve the entire population of home buyers and sellers, from first-time buyers to last-time sellers and investors in between, these companies, they focus only on the aging population. So that is their specialty. And this is a niche of ours, but we also serve a lot of other demographics. So it is great to pull in these senior care companies who can provide those resources.
Yeah, I think we covered everything else obviously, if you're, this was mentioned earlier, but if you are going to buy another home, even if you have your previous home is paid off and you have enough cash to go and buy a new home with cash, we always recommend speaking with a lender as well, just to, again, look at the different options. We're all about talking about options, figuring out what's best for you in a particular situation.
Right, because a lender might say, and combining the conversation with the lender and the CPA and the financial advisor, you might be advised to take out 50% of a mortgage and make payments on that, and then only put half down on your home versus paying cash. Because a lot of people will say, oh, I sold my house for $500,000 and now I'm going to buy this condo for $300,000, and that'll leave me with $200,000 minus all my costs associated. Where they really don't have to be that cash strapped, and they could take out a mortgage and have some tax benefits as well. So that's where the financial advisor and or the CPA can come into play and help them make good, smart decisions. And of course, it all has to do with the market, where the market is and where interest rates are and where that individual's finances are. That's why we have teams and recommend building a team around yourself to help make those decisions.
Would you prefer to age independently in your own home or live in a nursing facility? I know what I'd rather do. Friends Life Care membership offers just that. Plan today for a future lived at home with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience while protecting your savings. Learn about your options at a free seminar or webinar. Register at friendslifecare.org/register or call 215-628-8964. So loneliness and isolation and safety are challenges that older adults and people who are solo aging may face. And taking this into consideration, are there any types of areas that you, hearing this, would recommend or would be exploring living for those individuals?
I think we have kind of covered this already, but just to reiterate, like the different options of maybe a continuing care retirement community makes sense, where you start in independent living, and if you need it, slowly moving up to assisted living. or talking about different 55 and older communities and all the different styles and places and amenities that they have. We're well versed in all of that. And then also, if they're just interested in buying another home somewhere, I feel very strongly about steps.
Me too. Me too.
I feel really strongly about moving into a place that does not have steps. My dad's he moved recently, and he's almost 70, and he has like 15 steps to get into his place. And I feel very strongly about that. He's in good health and all that, but you just never know what's going to happen. And so talking about steps and safety at a home, the different fall risk issues. Can this be outfitted if you did need something like grab bars in the shower, or if there was a time where you needed a little bit more help, is there different, medical equipment that can be set up in the home? So I think taking that into consideration, if you are interested in a home outside of those two other categories.
Outside of the 55 and over, and outside of the assisted living / independent living. So it's funny, right before this, I was having a conversation with somebody talking about the fact that when we are showing homes, I'm always looking around going, okay, well, is there the opportunity here for a first floor bedroom? Because even though my 70-year-old uncle might be in amazing shape right now and able to do stairs, you just never know what's down the pike. And do you really want to have to move in 5 years if you have a fall and now you have 15 steps to get up to your front door? And maybe it's a ranch at that point, like a 1-level home, but you still have to get up those 15 steps. And another one that is important is, where is the garage? Is the garage on the lower level? Because now you're pulling into your garage and it's on the lower level. Even though you live in a ranch home, you've got to go up a full flight of stairs to your first floor. Or the driveway just naturally goes down. And is there a way to make a driveway that goes right into the front door of the home if it's not there already? So these are things that I'm thinking ahead with my client and saying, well, it's a Cape Cod, let's say, for example, right now, and there's 2 small bedrooms on the first floor, and the primary bedroom suite is on the second floor. And maybe the whole second floor is the primary bedroom suite, and they love it right now, and that works for them. And I'm thinking, well, this works if in the future you need first floor living, you can combine these 2 spaces and take this bathroom, and now you don't have to move all over again. Everything else works for this house. If you just need 1 floor living, then you take these 2 bedrooms. Now you have a first floor living space. You have 1 floor living. And then I think the next step is laundry, right? Do we still have to go down to the basement to do laundry? Laundry is one of the biggest reasons that so many places don't work that would otherwise work for this population. And it's so interesting that, because when these homes were built, that's where the laundry went, and it always went into the basement. So now when people are making kitchen renovations or, first floor renovations, to think ahead and say, well, is there a space I could put plumbing here for a stackable washer and dryer down the road if I need it? That, like, those little things are what we keep in mind, or what I definitely keep in mind when I'm going out to show houses. Yeah. And this is a downsize, right? So that's just
even like you said, because it's funny how our brains work after doing this type of work for so long, because I personally bought a home this year, and I was thinking about, okay, can I turn this powder room that's on the first level into a full bathroom at some point? And is there room for somebody to, because you just never know what's going to happen. And right. I think it's valuable that we're having those thoughts for our clients, even though they may not be thinking about it. Because it's just, we're both planners. So I think it becomes, But
so we focused a lot on safety, right? At safety challenges and making sure that they're comfortable in their space. But I know you touched on loneliness and isolation. So I would say if somebody's moving into a 55 and over community, typically, or an assisted or, independent living facility, typically there's going to be activities, events, social things that are geared towards them, that they have a like kind of like a menu to choose from. The challenge becomes if they don't have the ability to go out and seek those opportunities, or maybe they're just a little shy, so they're not going to naturally go out. And that's a conversation that we'll have with them and say, well, what do you like to do, and how do you meet friends, and where are your friends? Where do they live? Where do you do you play cards? Do you golf? Do you like to hike? Do you like to paint? What are the things that you like to do? And just to have them, keeping them top of mind when they're looking at places. So as they're looking around going, oh, they have a painting class. Oh, they play bridge every Monday at 12, or whatever the case may be. It is harder when you are well, actually, it could go either way. I was going to say it's harder when you don't buy in a community and you're buying in a neighborhood, which, might have a single young professional next door. And then on the other side, you might have a family with high school kids, and then you're in between. On the one hand, you could say that, well, now you have community around you, which is great. I actually love when communities have a whole age range and mixed demographics. That's what makes community. On the other hand, that can feel isolating, where you feel like you can't really connect with your neighbors, but it really depends on your personality. So having these questions, asking these questions of our clients ahead of time, what's your, how do you make friends? What do you like to do? Where do your kids live? Where do your friends live? Are you able to drive? Where do you like to go have lunch? Thinking about all these things ahead of time can help ward off some of those mistakes, and like, oh, I bought this house and now I feel like I don't really know where to go, or my kids are too far and it takes them 45 minutes to drive here, so they only come up, once a month. We want to really avoid that as much as possible, because loneliness and isolation is a problem, even when you are down the street from your kids and you're in an assisted living facility. So making sure that you're in the right place, again, going back to the very first conversation, that it's never too early to start the conversation about what's your lifestyle, what do you like doing, where do your kids live, do they work, how much time are they going to have to visit you? Would you rather be in a single home with a full-time aide when the time comes, or would you rather be in independent living and going into assisted living when that time comes? And listen, mistakes happen. You might think that you want to be in assisted living, and then you get there and you can't stand it. And that's okay. We're not saying that will never happen. We would like to avoid it if possible. And talking with your friends about communities that they've gone into or their parents have gone into, frankly, around here, Lancaster and Hershey, there are a lot of 55 and over communities that seems that they target that community, that it's affordable, the taxes are usually pretty reasonable, and it's targeted to that demographic. So they're going to naturally have things to do. And Delaware is another state where people tend to gravitate towards, because the tax advantages of living there are so good and the housing prices are less than Pennsylvania. But a lot of times those aren't options in our area, which is mainline and greater Philadelphia, because people want to be near their family. So they're not going to move 45 minutes to an hour away. Sometimes they will, but a lot of times they won't. But having conversations with your friends, where did they end up? Do they like it? Go visit them, talk to your family, people at your church, people in the community that you like to do things with, to get recommendations. Just like when you're asking friends, do you have a good realtor to recommend?
I was thinking when you were talking about that, I feel like we'll ask questions that people haven't necessarily thought of. Like we'll bring things up that maybe aren't on their radar. And I think that's important too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's been so important for me to hear about the whole life cycle of selling and buying a home from two professionals in the field, because it just brings up that, to go back again, it's never too early to start. You're both going to help look at what this individual or couple or family really wants to achieve their goal and help them set the vision. And I don't necessarily think that's what people associate with the real estate business. So the fact that you're able to provide that is just so valuable and comforting and reassuring.
Yeah, I agree. And, just like every, let's say therapist or lender or mechanic isn't the same, right? In every profession, every realtor isn't the same. And there are realtors who specialize in other things. And there are realtors who are more transactional based, right? And they just might call it like a churn and burn kind of transactional business. That's not why we got in the business, for sure. Not why Gina got in the business with a social work background. I mean, I was a communications major, and I always said, I just want to be in touch with people all day and help them. You can do a lot of things with that description and that major, right? And this is where I landed. And I feel like it really is an opportunity to be in touch with people all the time and help them. It's not a transaction. It's not just the numbers. I feel like when Gina and I are like clicking and thriving, it's when we have a lot of work and we're helping a lot of people, managing a lot of moving parts, because we know we're good at it. And it makes us feel good that we're able to execute it at a high level for people, even though it doesn't naturally fall under our job description.
It's that purpose.
Yeah, right. It's the why.
Yeah.
And we want the client to get there, to have at least get to their why, right? Or start seeing their why before they execute. And that's what the early conversations are about. What's your why? Why are you doing this? What are your goals? And how can we help you get there?
So before I let you go, I do want to hear from each of you, what is your best piece of real estate advice for older adults and solo agers in today's market? And feel free to reiterate something that you have talked about during the conversation. So Gina, do you want to go first?
I think this is a summary of everything we've talked about, but just having someone that you know is going to support you and advocate for your best interest. That would be my number one piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. Mine would be instead of listening to the news and instead of listening to the guy at the table next to you at lunch, go to your professionals that you know, like, and trust, and ask them what's going on in the real estate market locally. And with that information, you're going to be able to make the best decisions for you with accurate information.
Sarah, Gina, thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with both the practical and emotional sides of real estate. I'll also add in the life cycle of selling and buying with us today. If I hadn't just moved, which I'm a little regretful of now, I would certainly be your next client.
Well, you can call us in the next 5 to 7 years.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for having us. This was so fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Sarah Forti and Gina Bass for joining us today. If you have any questions or would like to reach Sarah or Gina, you can send them an email at sarah@fortihomes.com or gina@fortihomes.com. Call them at 610-688-0115 or check out their website at www.fortihomes.com. This information can also be found in the show notes. If you like our show, please rate, review, subscribe, and join us next time. To learn more about aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience, subscribe to our blog at friendslifecare.org/blog.